Hi, I'm Josh Lambert, a group product manager here at GitLab, and today I'd like to talk about what we are working on for our 13.2 release, which will be available on July 22nd, so about a month from now. We are still finishing up 13.1, as you can see here. Most of these will, we think, make it, but there's a chance that some of these will carry over into 13.2 if we don't. And in general, we've been working on some performance improvements. For example, the one that may or may not make it, for example, here is a improvement to our file blame API performance. We've already made some improvements to file blame in general in the 13.1 release, but there are some further improvements that we are working on here in this particular issue that may or may not carry over. So some of those things we might continue to work on. But we also have a whole bunch of exciting things here for 13.2 as well. The first one is that we'll be continuing our telemetry work in the memory team. One area that's important to us is to ensure that we know how GitLab is performing, not just for GitLab.com, which since we operate it, we have a very good understanding of how it performs, but also so we understand how all of our self-managed customers and their instances are running as well. And so we're trying to collect some basic information about how much memory their processes are consuming, how much memory their machines have, and also what types of machines they're running on, and then also some of the performance characteristics around things like how many requests per second they're processing and things of that nature. So we're trying to continue with this so we understand where we need to optimize, what types of machines people are using, for example. How important is it to try to reduce the memory consumption versus to improve the performance? We know all these things are important, but we're trying to prioritize the most impactful things first, and having that telemetry will help us make informed, data-driven decisions to make sure that we are delivering the most impact for our users as early as we possibly can, although we certainly want to do all these things here with the memory team in the future. So this instrumentation will help us, again, understand the performance characteristics of GitLab across the broader self-managed installations, so we can help make GitLab faster for everyone. So you can see things like these things down here in this first couple of issues. Further on down, we also are working on improving the blob controller. This is, for example, what shows you various types of files and also things like markdown rendering. It's actually quite important and called pretty frequently, actually. And we've been doing some work on this. In particular, you can see here some of the flame graphs that we've been doing as far as our research. And we've actually found some challenges here, in particular around how often it ends up having to call some XML processing in the course of rendering Markdown. We've made some changes here. They will land in the early part of 13.2. We are very excited about them. After the changes, you can see here that the rendering time for a Markdown file went from, in this case, our test file, 38 seconds down to 19 seconds, essentially a 50% improvement over the total time. And in particular, the amount of time we spend in Markdown rendering has gone down dramatically. So you can see here, for example, instead of 11.7 seconds, it took under half a second to complete. So just dramatically faster. And we did this largely by caching some of the XML results. So just tremendous performance improvements here. Really excited about those and can't wait to get those out into all of your hands, and so your users can have a much more enjoyable experience in using GitLab. So that's a really big win for us here on the memory team. One other area that we're working on to also improve performance is in particular on the live tracing architecture. Currently for incremental logging or live tracing, we've called it two different names, currently incremental logging. This is required if you don't want to use NFS for GitLab. Essentially, as the logs come in, so that we can show them in the CI screen, we actually have to upload them in chunks. And currently, this is not enabled on GitLab.com due to performance problems. It does work, however, at scale, we have found some issues. And so we are working to improve the performance of the incremental logging feature so that it can run at GitLab.com scale And this will allow us to, number one, of course, ensure that it works for all of our other customers as well, since GitLab.com is the biggest instance. But also it will allow us to shift more services for GitLab.com into Kubernetes, which is an ongoing project that we have here at GitLab. And so that'll also help to unblock that effort and help us realize those benefits of running more parts of GitLab in Kubernetes for .com. So we are particularly excited about this one. And the first step here is to actually re-enable the existing features as an infrastructure issue here to do so. And that will allow us to then take a look at what's happening and try to understand where the performance problems are occurring so we can then go ahead and fix them. A couple other areas that we're working on here is working to detect and understand how often we use the cache SQL queries. These can end up being actually quite expensive, in particular on memory. And you can see here some of the rationale from Camille. And so we'll be working to understand these and also do some testing to reduce the amount of them and understand their impact. This can also help, again, inform, kind of in the sense of our development practices, whether we should be using them, and if so, when. A couple other improvements that we're working on here is also improving the memory sharing. This is for both Action Cable and web, but also for Scikit-Cluster as well. And in general, what we're trying to do here is we are trying to do more of our loading before we fork. The idea here is that since we can load more of this memory before we fork, we can end up sharing more of this memory as opposed to having to load it after forking in individual processes, which will cause us to consume more memory. So by shifting this earlier, we can end up potentially saving a significant chunk of memory from GitLab. And so that'll be very exciting for us. And so we're working to do this in a couple different areas here, as you can see for Sidekick and also Action Cable. We do have a number of other features here as well that we're working on. We're working on a blog post. We're working on some improvements to the health check and readiness probes. And we're also working on the impacts of Ruby 2.7. We are blocked in 2.7 for a couple of other reasons, but there is some nice improvements to the garbage collection, which will allow us to be able to essentially have a better memory usage because it ends up dirtying less pages during the process of doing garbage collection. And so this allows us to end up sharing more memory across the processes. Again, continuing that theme I mentioned earlier around kind of in the preload and managing the forking process. So we are excited about that. And then also some other more minor issues that we're working to continue to improve things. So that's it for our release here for 13.2. We have a large number of improvements that we're going to make, and in particular, they are around helping us to ensure that we understand how GitLab is performing, which will help us inform future improvements and future prioritization decisions, improving the performance, in particular, like the ones like the rendering of Markdown, and also reducing memory consumption. So we're really excited about this. We can't wait to get these features out to you. And definitely stay tuned next release as well for our 13.3 release, which will have equally exciting features as well. Thanks all.